Welcome to Expert Insight. I'm your host, Dr. Pam Perry, and today we're diving into a game-changing conversation about intentional leadership and driving results in the workplace. My first guest is a powerhouse in corporate leadership, an internationally recognized author, a champion of servant leadership, none other than Omar L. Harris. With over 2 decades of experience leading teams at Fortune 500 companies across the globe, Omar is on a mission to revolutionize how we lead and inspire. He's all about breaking down barriers, fostering inclusive excellence, and helping leaders create workplaces where everyone thrives. Omar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. So let's start at the beginning. Your leadership journey spans over continents, industries, and transformations. So what was that defining moment when you said, this is my mission, this is why I lead?
Well, Pam, I was always a student of leadership, so all of my career I was curious about leading and leadership practices. But it wasn't until I got my first enterprise operation as general manager of Indonesia for a large pharmaceutical company with 900 employees, and I had to let go of 200 employees in my second week on the job that I realized the power of leadership and what it means to really be responsible for people.
Oh my goodness. So you were one of the youngest managers of that company in the world.
Yes.
And you were at a ripe age of, let's say, under 40.
Under 40, yes.
And probably one of the youngest leaders there. And that's where you really kind of got into the whole leadership journey.
Exactly.
But one of the things is really your signature is talking about intentional leadership. So let's break down what that really means. You know, why is that a game changer in business today?
Right, so I've evolved my leadership practice. I've talked about servant leadership in my books. I've talked about Jedi leadership in my books, and now I'm talking about intentional leadership.
Okay.
So servant leadership is about inverting the hierarchy of leadership so that we focus on the employees who are closest to the customer. So we add value to them so they can add value to our customers.
Okay.
Jedi leadership is about extending more outcomes for more stakeholders. So not just shareholders, but employees, communities, customers, and the environment as a leader. So it's about a higher level of leadership. And intentional leadership is about bringing in purpose, higher purpose, and inspiring people to be their best selves at work.
I love that. I love that. And so your book, The Jedi Leadership, explain what Jedi means.
So JEDI is an acronym for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
Okay, all right. And so that's one of the main things that you speak on as well. But you talk about winning as one team. You know, so many companies struggle with creating unity in the workplace. But what's the number one thing leaders need to do today to build a strong, values-driven team?
So that's why I've pivoted to intentional leadership, Pam, because the number one thing that leaders need to do to win as one team is to create higher purpose. That's what I call true north. So when we know our true north and it's bigger than ourselves, we will bring more of ourselves to the proceedings and bring our best selves to the proceedings to achieve more than we thought possible.
And that makes that one team.
Yeah.
So let's really kind of talk a little bit about diversity. Let's keep it real. A lot of companies talk about diversity.
Right.
Some of them want to create inclusive environments, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that companies make when trying to make this inclusive environment, and how can they fix it?
I think the biggest mistake companies make around the whole situation of diversity, equity, and inclusion is treating DEI as if it's one word. So each of those letters has an outcome that you're trying to achieve. Diversity is an outcome, equity is an outcome, inclusion is an outcome, and the reason why I bring the J into it with Jedi is justice. Without justice and fairness, then the rest of it falls apart.
There you go.
So diversity, the outcome of diversity is innovation. So if you are for innovation, you have to be for diversity, because diverse teams innovate more than homogeneous teams.
Right.
Equity is about opportunity. So if you believe that everyone should have the equal opportunity to participate in the organization, then you have to be for equity. That's all it means. And inclusion is about productivity. So if you love productivity, then you have to create an inclusive culture. So what happens is companies think that DEI is one lumped up word, and they're not looking at the separate, disparate outcomes for each of these terms. And so they set it up as one lump versus we have a diversity goal, an equity goal, an inclusion goal, and more importantly, a justice goal. Yes.
Okay. And so that's the framework that you really teach from.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that you speak and teach on. So you've spoken on some of the biggest stages, impacting thousands. What really makes your message different? Or what can people experience when they hear you Omar L. Harris live? Like, what are the things that they're going to get their takeaways?
Well, I'm a storyteller.
Okay.
I like to tell stories about my own experiences and the experience of other leaders that I work with. But more importantly, I like to break down leadership into components that people can understand, like self-awareness. Like the fact that I like to talk to people in the audience and say that you don't actually know what you smell like.
No, we don't.
We think we know, but we don't know. It's about self-awareness, right? And so you need a coach, you need mentors, you need friends to tell you about yourself so that you can develop as a leader. So leadership without coaching is really almost an empty pursuit. You need help to be the best self, bring your best self to your employees so they can bring their best selves to the community and the customers that they serve.
It's kind of like if you're in the picture, you can't see the frame.
Exactly.
So you need someone there. So that is one of the things too. And so you speak often, 2 or 3 times a month, and you do trainings and that kind of thing. What are some of the main things, I guess you would say, that your companies that you train with or that you train for have said about what has made the difference?
Well, I think the whole thing about True North, so inspiring their teams, to basically bringing them together to define a purpose bigger than themselves. They're loving that. They're also loving the process of discipline execution that I bring. So basically how they set their priorities, set their wildly important goals, and then to go about achieving their goals. So for me, I'm all about outcomes, all about achieving what we say we're going to do, and having a process and be very structured in how we go about doing what we're going to do.
So you must have studied leadership for a long time.
Yes.
The whole thing about leadership with you is intentional leadership, Jedi leadership, those kind of things. But you remember one of the first books you read about leadership that just said, ooh, I really like this? I mean, you said you're reading at a young age. It's like, I don't know if I would have read books on leadership, but what was one of the first books you remember reading about leadership?
The first book I ever read about leadership was How to Win Friends and Influence People by
Dale
Carnegie. That book is a leadership book.
I didn't realize
because
that.
leadership is influence. So when you're talking about influencing people, you're talking about leadership. And so one of the things I took from that book that I still use today is he has an exercise in the book to walk around smiling at everyone you meet for a day. It transforms your interactions with people. Just smile at everyone you meet as soon as you see them. And you will see the transformation in how people receive you and how you are perceived by everyone around you.
That's true. Leadership is influence.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. So if you had one leadership lesson to put on a billboard for the world to see, what would it be?
It would say lead with love, but love is an acronym, LUV.
Oh.
And that acronym is for empathy. So love is an acronym for listen, understand, and validate.
Empathy. That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so, and that's where the inclusiveness comes in as well. And that's one of the main things. So how can companies, as we wrap up now, and organizations bring you in to fire up their teams or to transform their leadership and create real impact? How can they connect with you?
Online, Pam. OmarLHarris.com.
Love it.
Is the easiest way to find me.
I love it. And then are you on social?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I do a lot on LinkedIn. So Omar L. Harris on LinkedIn. Omar L. Harris on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky now, so you can find me on Blue Sky. So
I just got on Blue Sky the other day.
So basically, wherever you want to find me, Omar L. Harris is your key to find me.
Omar, this conversation has been powerful. Oh my, you've given us so much insight into leadership, accountability, and how to truly empower teams in today's world. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and dropping those gems. And for those of you watching, if you want to keep learning from Omar and his incredible work, be sure to check out his latest book and follow him on social media for more leadership gems. When we come back, we're shifting gears to the world of education and student engagement with an expert who's changing the game in classrooms across the country. Stay with us. Expert Insight will be right back.
Welcome to Speak, Sell, Shine, the premier event for speakers ready to elevate their influence and make their mark. Set in the heart of the nation's capital at the iconic Howard Theater, Speak, Sell, Shine offers a unique opportunity to transform your brand in an unforgettable setting. Speak, Sell, Shine is an invitation-only event. Selected attendees who meet our program's requirements are invited to submit their application. Dr. Pam Perry, a PR and publicity powerhouse, reveals strategies that build brands. The Howard Theater is more than a venue, it's an inspiration. Emmy Award-winning speaker Ryan Dorn, booked 40 to 60 times a year, shares his secrets on sales. Professional makeup artists are on site preparing each speaker for the spotlight, with professional photographers and video crews capturing every angle. Attendees are ready to step into the spotlight for photo shoots and simulated news studio interviews. At Speak, Sell, Shine, participants walk away with more than just materials. They leave with a new perspective, a refined message, and the tools to take their brands to the next level. Are you ready to speak, sell, and shine? Apply today and take your place among the legends.
Are you ready to elevate your speaking career and be a part of a movement that amplifies Black voices? Speakers Magazine is your go-to resource, highlighting top speakers, industry insights, and strategies to take your platform to the next level. Subscribe today and unlock the blueprint for speaker success. Visit www.speakersmagazine.com, the #1 magazine for Black speakers. Subscribe now and start your journey to success. Amplify your voice. Subscribe today.
Welcome back to Expert Insight. Now we're talking about the power of education and leadership, classroom transformation, and student engagement. And no one does it better than my guest, Stephen Boyd. He's an award-winning scholar, educator, motivational speaker of 25 years of experience as a teacher, administrator, and trainer. Known as a student engagement agent, Stephen is on a mission to help educators turn struggling classrooms into thriving ones. He, as he puts it, is transforming classrooms from outrageous to outstanding. And let me tell you, he is fired up about it. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, it's great having you.
Yes.
So from outrageous to
Outstanding. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get into that. One of the things, I want you to give us a little bit of your background of your educational leadership. You've dedicated your career to transforming education. So what was your defining moment, when you realized that this was your calling?
My defining moment was the rejection of my school leader, about maybe 12 to 13 years ago. At that time, the state of Maryland was proposing that school districts come up with more progressive policies and move away from zero tolerance discipline policies. And when you examine the data overwhelmingly said that these infractions started in the classroom. Classroom disruption, disrespect, insubordination. So we're not talking about knives, guns, weapons, drug possession, anything of that nature. And these were the overwhelming data points statewide. And so the state board wanted the local school boards to come up with more progressive policies. Well, when you really examine that data, all those infractions start in the classroom.
In the classroom.
And so therefore, it was my idea that I put forward to the leadership at the time, say, hey, we need to do classroom management training. It was completely rejected. But that rejection was actually a new direction for me. And so therefore, I went to some classroom management trainings, and I really loved it. I loved the fact that they were presenting, and I saw something in that kind of was a light bulb in me.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, that really began the trajectory of this is really what I'm called to do in terms of transforming classrooms, transforming teachers, getting them to think differently about behavior, and then helping them shine because they want to teach their content. And that really was a defining moment for me.
Oh, that is good. So you're taking something negative, turn it around to positive, and really found that classroom training was like your thing.
Oh, that was my thing.
That was your
Yeah,
thing.
that was
your thing. So it's evolved from really being a teacher in the classroom to now coaching educators at scale. So how has that journey been?
That journey is almost like a crock pot, if you will. Growing up, my mother, she would make a chicken noodle soup. You got a little chicken, you got a little celery, you got some carrots, you got some bay leaf. And so for me, it's been a combination of a lot of good, a lot of challenges, a lot of bad. But in the end, the chicken noodle soup for me is gratitude. So the journey for me, although I've had all these mixed bag of experiences in this crock pot, although it's been kind of pushed to the side and kind of slow baked and slow cooked, what's come out of it is a sense of gratitude. And when I'm sharing in audiences and sharing with staff, I really want them to sense that gratitude, even though I'm training them on better strategies and better ways that they can kind of interact with their students. So the journey has been very much that. Although it's been kind of slow going, I'm grateful for where I am and grateful for the opportunity to share with others because I believe that transformation and the message that I have to share with them is truly transformational if they can embrace it it will translate into their classroom.
And so you were a teacher. What grade did you start, and what were you teaching
So
to where you are now?
when I first started, I was a music teacher pre-K to 6.
Oh.
So I had the little babies all the way to
Okay. Yes.
And at that time, I was in a split position, and I was on a rolling cart, and I had all these little instruments. And of course, this is a time of records and cassette tapes. And so you can imagine this big cart with all these different things, and you had a half hour of lunch, maybe an hour worth of prep. So all day long, you're going from classroom to classroom, you know, and on certain days, I was split between 2 schools. And so in the beginning, it was helter-skelter. So we're going back almost 30 years. I mean, the classroom has evolved, schedules have evolved since that time. But
you're still K through 12, though.
And still K through 12 at that time. Then I matriculated to become a middle school music teacher because I really wanted to do choirs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a little bit more challenging music. And then matriculated later on to a high school choir director because I really wanted to do like the trips and taking the kids on all the excursions and you know, wonderful things like that, and festivals. You know, that was really a great experience, and we won some awards, so I was really excited about the opportunity to do that. And then matriculated, then became an assistant principal elementary school, assistant principal at high school. I oversaw alternative school for some time.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have a myriad of experiences, but then what I've been able to do is collect all those experiences as a result of what I'm doing now transformationally through SB Entertainment, and help teachers really command the stage, as we like to say, motivate, activate, and elevate their instructional practices to move those classrooms from outrageous to outstanding.
I love that. I love that. So you have really had the whole gamut from K to 6 to middle school to high school.
Yes, yes.
So you're known for really helping teachers create high-performing, engaged students. What's the biggest mistake you really see educators make when trying to boost classroom engagement?
The biggest mistake educators make is assumption. They assume students should know how to behave. And if we think about it, the same thing that we do when we take a player that we're trying to translate into a pro basketball player, hockey player, tennis player, we have to take them as a blanket slate and teach them what we might call expert behaviors and expert skills. The problem is many teachers think students should know by now. They should know how to walk into the classroom. They should know how to sit down. They should know how to sharpen a pencil. They should know by now. But the same way you want to teach that math, that social studies, you're the expert, you have to be the expert as relates to the behavior in my classroom. And so I often use this analogy where I talk to teachers about your restaurant. Your classroom is your restaurant, and you have to teach people how to behave in your restaurant. And so what I would challenge teachers to do is, what am I assuming that's taking classroom instructional time in my classroom? You know, if you have to teach students, this is how we talk to one another in my classroom, show them the perfect, show them the erroneous way to do it, even show them ways that you don't even want them to experiment with it. Show them the gamut. Make sure that you monitor that. I have a method that you have heard about called the ATM method. Assume nothing, teach everything, and then model and monitor. And so therefore, when we talk about really what it is that teachers are doing wrong, is if they can erase assumption and teach behaviors in the same way you teach math, in the same way you teach science, social studies, whatever your content area, you will find that you'll get your time back. You'll find your relationships with your students will be better, but most importantly, when it comes down to formative and summative assessments, you'll find that your data is going to overwhelmingly improve because you have created this environment where you have this community and the kids are collaborating with you instead of working against you.
So the ATM method, I love that.
The ATM method.
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
We want the teachers to cash in.
Yeah, that is cool. I like that. I like that. So that framework. So we hear a lot about the struggles in education today: teacher burnout, student disengagement, even defunding the schools. So what's the one power move teachers can make right now to shift their classroom to be more dynamic for the better?
Just build relationships, because you know relationships are going to outlast presidents, policies, picket lines. I have students today that will see me in the store and say, yo, Mr. Boyd, what's up? What's up? You know, you remember that poem we used to do at the beginning of your class? And all those kind of, so those relationships outlast. When I even think about, you know, maybe some of the internal things and the political things that were happening at those times, you know, you know, it feels like the sky is falling. You know, particularly when we look at this current administration, you know, everyone feels like the sky is falling, but I would encourage students to keep first things first, keep the main thing, build relationships with students, because those relationships will outlast whatever we're going to be continuing with over the next 4 years.
That's true.
And we know that the pendulum in politics kind of swings every 4 years, every 8 years anyway. And so focus on what matters, and that's really building high quality relationships with students that's going to translate with them for the rest of their lives.
That is good. That is good. So if you had one message to put on a billboard for teachers across the country, what would it be?
Be great no matter what.
I love it.
Be
I love
great
it.
no matter what. Those students need you to be great. When you are not feeling well, be great. When you're not sure what you're teaching, be great. When you're questioning what you're doing, just be great. And be there and be present.
Be present.
And be present, because students, they're going through so much. The mental health crisis, as we know, has really been exacerbated by the pandemic. And we know that schools now are trying to bring in a lot of extra providers. There's been an increase in social workers in schools now to provide those particular services that students need, therapeutic services. And so, but you may not be a therapist, you may not be a psychiatrist, you may not be a psychologist, but you know what? You can just be present and do the best that you can to be there and be a scaffolding for these kids who are really going through so much in their personal lives, and bring it to school. This is the only place that for 6.5 hours a day that they're going to somewhat be safe. So why not be safe around you? And why not connect with you? I
love that, being connect. So you're working on a book.
Yes, I am.
So it'll be out this year. Can you divulge the name? I think I kind of said in the open, but you can.
Yes. So we have a training that we put together and released in 2022 called Contagious Teaching. And so now we're going to convert that to a book and make that available. Contagious Teaching is a training we put together that really asks the question, what's the secret sauce of a master teacher? What is it that a master teacher does that is that it factor? And so there are 4 things that we came up through our research that when we actually looked at different evaluation and observation models, comparing and contrasting them, we found there were 4 things that were consistent from California to Hawaii to New York or wherever. And these 4 things are what we call the 4 C's: connection, content, context, and containment. And so connection just had to do with relationships. Context has to do with really understanding who's in front of you, student-wise, and then using that context to inform your content. The content is the explicit instruction piece, where we really help teachers teach based on the quality of instruction versus the quantity of time. And then finally, there is containment, which is really talking about how student engagement helps them to contain what you want them to retain. So if we think about important. A container, right?
Yes.
You know, so when we increase that engagement, the retention of knowledge goes up. And so Contagious Teaching is really a wrap around those 4 C's that we're communicating to our audience to say, hey, if you do these 4 things consistently, you'll be a master teacher, or what we're calling a contagious teacher.
Yes, and you're taking classroom from outrageous to outstanding.
That's right.
That's it. I love it. I love it. So how can educators or school leaders connect with you and, you know, bring your expertise to their schools, and where can they book you for keynotes and trainings?
I would love for them to go to my website at www.iamstephenboyd.com. Also on social media at iamstephenboyd. Both on Instagram and on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, I am Stephen Boyd Now. On LinkedIn. And you can connect with me on all those platforms.
And I think on YouTube it is
I am Stephen Boyd Now.
Good. Very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really good.
Thank you.
So, Stephen, this has been an incredible conversation. I just really love it. You've given educators, parents, and students so much to think about when it comes to engagement, motivation, and truly transforming education. You know, I love your passion for taking classrooms from outrageous to outstanding, and that's really exactly the kind of impact we need right now. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And for those of you watching, if you want to learn more about Stephen's work and how to bring his game-changing strategies to your school or your organization, be sure to follow him at iamstephenboyd.com and check out his resources. That's a wrap for today's episode of Expert Insight. Remember, leadership and learning go hand in hand. So stay inspired, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.